Good afternoon. I would like to call, I didn't want to break it. I would like to call the meeting of the Assembly Committee on Revenue to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Assemblywoman Anderson. Present. Assemblywoman Cohen. Here. Assemblywoman Considine. Present. Assemblywoman Gallant. Present. Assemblyman Gray. Here. Assemblyman Hafen. Assemblywoman Mosca. Here. Assemblyman Wynn. Here. Assemblyman O'Neill. Here. Assemblyman Orentlicker. Here. Assemblywoman Summers Armstrong. Present. Chair Backus.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome those appearing today in person in Carson City, as well as those in Las Vegas, as well as those individuals who may be listening over the internet and the phone line. At this time, I would ask those that are present in the audience to mute all electronic devices if possible. And also, if you haven't had an opportunity to sign in, please sign in so that we do have your information. If you do plan to speak today in support or opposition or neutral of the bill or give public testimony, we'd ask if you have a business card to also please provide that to our committee secretary. That would be greatly appreciated. Today, we will hear one bill in this committee, that's Assembly Bill 62, which revises provisions governing property tax exemptions for low-income housing. I'd like to open the hearing on Assembly Bill 62. I'd ask the presenters, and they're already at the dais, so thank you. And please feel free to start when you both are ready.
Thank you, Chair Backus. For the record, I'm Bill Brewer. I'm the Executive Director for Nevada Rural Housing Authority, and I'm also a member of the Housing Advisory Committee to the Nevada Housing Division. A couple of sessions ago, the Housing Advisory Committee was created by the 80th session of the legislature and charged to assist the Housing Division with information and input about community needs and so forth, and to advise them on the Qualified Allocation Plan, which distributes tax credits in the state. For the regular session, the Advisory Committee is permitted to have one bill draft, which relates to matters within the scope of the committee. And so the bill before you, AB 62, is our bill draft for this session. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Steve Acroth, who is the Director of the Nevada Housing Division, and he will explain the specifics of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Steve Acroth, Administrator of the Nevada Housing Division, for the record. Come before you to present AB 62. And what I want to do is kind of walk through the what, why, how portion of the bill. So what AB 62 does, it revises the existing statute, and the existing statute allows for a property tax exemption on qualified low-income housing projects. This is done solely through one source, and that is the money appropriated under the Federal Home Investment Partnerships Act. What AB 62 will do will be to streamline this by allowing 4 other sources of funding to grant the property tax exemption. And I want to emphasize that this is not to expand the property tax exemption. It is to expand the sources for that property tax exemption. So the 4 sources that are proposed in the legislation are if the project receives low-income housing tax credits, if it receives state account for affordable housing trust funds, if it receives federal housing trust funds, and if it receives Section 811 federal funding. And those are all programs that the division currently has purview over. So in order to kind of talk you through this and have a better understanding of exactly what this is and why it's important to modify this, I want to go through a very quick discussion of how we build affordable housing. And that's what the next few slides will do. There's some limiting things to what we can do at the division in the development of affordable housing. And most of what we do, in fact, I would say 95% of what we do, is related to the availability of private activity bonds, and 9% credits. Those two programs are federal programs which support the development of affordable housing. And so in the private activity bonds, the state receives about $345 million annually. It's based on per capita. 50% of that goes to the Director of Business and Industry. 50% is divided amongst the local jurisdictions. And the local jurisdictions can use them for affordable housing projects if they choose to, as can the director's office. But then in September, if the local jurisdiction has not created a resolution to support the development of affordable housing, that authority, private activity bond authority, comes back to the Department of Business and Industry. And for the last few years, the Department of Business and Industry, aside from one project that comes to mind in the past 3-4 years, smaller project for economic development, it's gone to housing. So effectively what you're going to see in the next few slides going over this is what we were able to do with that funding through private activity bonds and 9% tax credits, which are allocated by the U.S. Treasury to the state. We are the allocating authority, the Nevada Housing Division, and we receive roughly about $9 million annually in tax credit authority to provide to developers. And so what we end up doing with that authority is through both the 4% program and the 9% program. And you've heard this, or maybe you haven't heard this, but when you develop affordable housing, you need to take a layered approach. And so that's been described. In fact, it was described by Senator Cortez Masto this morning at a hearing at in the U.S. Senate as lasagna financing. And so if you look at a capital stack, and I'm not going to go through all of this capital stack, I'd be happy to engage with members of the committee if you want to learn more about this, but I want to point out one small portion of this. And at the very bottom of this slide, you'll see that home funds, in this particular project, there was $1.5 million allocated. It's not a really significant portion of the capital stack for the construction, but it is significant in that it trips the property tax exemption. And when you're collecting rents that are not market rate for a property that costs just as much to build as market rate properties, it's very, very important to have that property tax exemption. So in this particular instance, you're going to see a very little, here it's 4%, and in most cases it's actually lower, of home funds put into the project to get the development to pencil over the 30 years of affordability. In the 9% program, we use it there also. And here it's identified in green, 1.4 million. This was more of a percentage of the project in this particular project, but less amount of dollars. But you're going to see it in what you see about 6 different layers of financing in here. So home loans need to be a part of, or home grants, however they're put into the project, need to be a part of the capital stack. And through the use of these funds in the 4% program, we've created over 5,000 units in the past 4 years, using $675 million of bond cap authority, and we're still working through that. And what happened to my cursor? Okay, don't need a cursor. In the 9% program, we've created almost 1,200 units of affordability. All these projects that you see on those 2 pages had home funds attached to them in some way, shape, or form to get that property tax exemption. So that's basically how we build affordable housing in about 3 minutes, and the significance of the home funds in the project. So the actual allocation of home funds comes to the state in 5 different manners. It is a funding method through HUD that goes to Clark County, Henderson, Las Vegas, Reno, and the state of Nevada. And from the state of Nevada, the Nevada Housing Division, we do the balance of the state. So if it's not listed there, for instance, North Las Vegas doesn't get an allocation, they'll either come to Clark County or the state for affordable housing trust funds. And so we get about $12 million annually in home funds. I will tell you that these were the 2022 home fund allocations. 2023 have already been preliminarily announced to us. That's going to increase to $12.8 million. So it doesn't vary too much, other than I want to point out to this committee that home funds are subject to congressional approval annually. So if, for some reason, I don't know, hypothetically, there's an argument over the debt ceiling and they have to cut some funding somewhere to negotiate things, home funds could potentially be on the chopping block. That would stop basically affordable housing development in the state, because we need to have these, or new construction development in the state. So it's a very small bit of funding when you compare it to other manners, but it's hugely important. And the last thing that I'll mention real quick, and then I'll turn it over to Bill for some final comments. In Nevada, we're about the only state in the country where it's required to get the property tax exemption. I don't know of another one where that exists. So our home funds, what I just showed you, are primarily used for the development of affordable housing. But it has other uses. We've heard, and I'm sure you all have heard, rental assistance, security deposits, in any other manner that we could potentially use that. Because we have a limited amount of funding and because it primarily goes to affordable housing, strictly development, passage of AB 62 could potentially free up those home funds for other uses that we're not using to the fullest extent in the state of Nevada. With that, I'll turn it over to Bill for some final comments, and then I think we'll be ready for questions.
Thank you, Steve. Again, Bill Brewer for the record. Just want to finish up with just a couple of things to emphasize what Steve has said. Why do we need this exemption in the first place? Once the project is built and leased up using the lasagna that Steve talked about, the rents that are collected have to be enough to help the property operate effectively. Those operating costs for multifamily property could run as much as $1,000 per unit per month. It just takes a fair chunk of money to run a project for wages on the management, insurance, everything. Property taxes are a significant line item in the cost for operating an affordable housing project. The abatement of those taxes can be a substantial help in assisting the project's cash flow and allow it to meet its foremost mission of serving very low-income households. Home funds, as Steve mentioned, have traditionally been the trigger to those tax abatements. The changes proposed in this legislation would simply allow other sources of financing to trigger the tax abatement. Because there are several other ways a community can support the development of affordable housing and then meet the match requirements for home funds, including donated land or other fee abatements, this would ensure the home funds could be utilized most strategically by the Housing Division to help some projects over the finish line and into construction. So to summarize what we've heard, common sources of funding for an affordable housing project include home funds, low-income housing tax credits, state housing trust funds, and Section 811 federal funding. The proposed legislation simply recognizes those 4 sources common in any affordable housing financing stack as appropriate triggers for the exemption. Thank you, Chairwoman Backus and the committee, for your time. Be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation, especially the background. This is a definite niche of development in our community. Do we have any questions from our committee members? We'll go ahead with Vice Chair Considine.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions and a very long microphone. First, just so I have it straight in my head, I know that all of this is talking about developing, also rehabbing, and working on existing buildings. And I guess my question is, for all of this money, is it for developing and rehabbing existing and preserving existing buildings, or can any of this money be used to purchase an existing building that isn't already affordable housing to change into affordable housing?
Bill Brewer for the record. I assume you're speaking of those funding sources such as low-income housing tax credits and so forth. Yes, they can be used to build new units. They can be used to purchase existing units and rehabilitate units and to preserve affordable units.
And thank you. And then I had another question on the bill. Section 1, subsection 3. So there seems to be, in the existing language, which would be section 1, subsection 2, it's talking about low-income units. It's using the words low-income repeatedly. And then in the new section, it just says the units. Can you explain the difference? Are we looking at a different income level? Is it low, very low, AMI? What the difference is between listing for the existing portions of the funding sources and the abatement, or not the abatement sources, but the other sources for low-income units. But then in section 3, it just says units. Section 1, subsection 3.
Yeah, Steve Acroft for the record. Thank you for pointing that out. Section 3 on this, if we're talking about the blue portion, the highlighted portion, okay, thank you. That specifically transfers back to the housing trust funds. So national housing trust funds are defined by being 30% area median income and lower. That's what that particular funding source is. So Section 3, because it flags 12 USC 4568, that specifically references that source of funding.
Next, we'll go ahead to Assemblywoman Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing forward this language. Sounds like there's a large amount of people that were involved in the discussion of it. My first question actually has a little bit more to do with slide, let me find it now. It had to do with slide 8, where you explained where the money is divided out. And it's very specific with Clark County, Henderson, and Las Vegas, and then Reno. And I know that it's also referenced in another letter that we had received from looks like the Housing and Neighborhood Development Manager from the city of Reno. So if I'm understanding this correctly, the money is only given to the city of Reno for all of Washoe County, or is then the Sparks area, which is where I represent, does that come under the jurisdiction of the state of Nevada? So I guess I'm just looking for some equal representation or some understanding of how that exactly is divided up.
Steve Acroft, for the record. Actually, what is done in both Clark County and in Washoe County is a consortium. They have the home consortium, and so the funding does come into the city of Reno, but then they've engaged with the county and the city of Sparks, and they all have representatives. There might be somebody in the audience who can speak better to the makeup of the consortium, but that's also done in Las Vegas. And that's sort of one of the things that has to happen as we talk about streamlining this process, is the money has to be allocated by that consortium first. So one of the things that we are always telling affordable housing developers who are actively pursuing projects in Washoe and Clark County, before you even come to the division, get your home funds. And that slows that process down. So again, talking about streamlining, because we're ready to issue them potentially the tax credits, and we're actually ready to potentially issue them the ability to go before the Board of Finance to get bond cap approval for their projects, but we don't make that move until they have some commitment of home dollars to their project.
Thank you for that clarification. And so, is this the current, or is this written down anywhere that this is the policy to always have that discussion first, or is that just the practice because of the current leadership under Nevada Hand?
Steve Agroth, for the record, it's not under Nevada Hand, but that's effectively. And I guess maybe this emphasizes how important home funding is and how limited the source is. If you don't have that, we know you can't build it. So it's sort of, if you build it, they will come. Here, we need you to come before the home consortium, and then we can build. It's a little flipped on its head there.
So it's its own version of if you give a mouse a cookie. But again, this is just the current practice. There's nothing written down or set in stone that is the expectation, if I'm understanding correctly.
Steve Acroft, for the record, from the division's perspective, yes. There might be some other procedural things that the home consortiums in those two areas do, but from the division's perspective, we need to ensure that you have that level of funding. Otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels.
Okay, I don't know if I have any, do I have any more questions from the committee members? Oh, Erica, go ahead, please. Assemblywoman Mosca.
Thank you, Chair. No problem. It's actually a similar question. I was on the Community Development Advisory Committee, so that is my background knowledge when it comes to the experience of approving the home funds. And so if I'm understanding it correctly, it's you don't have any builders then who did not get home funds, who did not get this exemption because it's the front end is the issue. So we don't have any examples, like they built it, but then they didn't get it because they didn't get the home funds.
That's correct. We're Steve Acroft, for the record. We're going to want to see that as part of their capital stack when we evaluate the financial feasibility of their project.
I actually just have a quick question. It's something I just want to confirm for Section 1. Looking at Section 1, subsection A3, I wasn't as familiar with respect to the money from the account for affordable housing created by NRS 319.500. So I pulled it up and I wanted to see, hopefully there were some sort of conditions on those monies, just because I was more familiar with like Section 42, other tax credits that are basically only issued when it's for affordable housing. And it seems like under NRS 319.510, there's a variety of how those monies could be used. And so I was kind of overthinking how broad this could expand this provision, because it pertains to real property that could be used for housing and related facilities for persons with low income. And as I would understand it, it couldn't just be used for like a nonprofit to somehow receive monies from this account for the purposes of maybe assisting folks with, and maybe a nonprofit may be a bad example, but a business that's helping persons with low income housing. The whole purpose for this would be the persons would actually have to reside at the facility and live there and get the benefit of low income housing. Is that accurate?
Steve Acroft, administrator for the record. I'll try to take a stab at it and see where we can land. So the account for affordable housing is basically the required state match for the home funds. So and that is roughly about $10 million annually that we collect, $10 to $12 million. That's collected by taxation and provided for the division to support that. It does a couple of different things, but it can be used for development. It can also be used, to your point, we can provide it to a nonprofit to provide services housing stability, rental assistance, security deposits, all of those type of things. But what we're talking about here is specifically the construction, preservation, rehabilitation of a project.
And just to follow up, a project where someone would be able to live in a low-income housing development. It's not like the other facility, like the commercial use of another facility. This is purely just for those places where individuals would be able to live in an affordable housing situation.
Steve Acroft, for the record, that's correct.
Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any other questions? I have one from Assemblywoman Gallant, and then I'll take Assemblyman Nguyen after that.
Hi, thank you. So I was excited to see this bill. I'm in real estate and do property management. So, and it seems like where I'm looking at this in terms of the difference is that originally the bill was saying funded, meaning it had to be funded in a certain way, but now you're adding financing to that and naming these particular programs, correct? Sorry, I'm going to ask a two-part if that's okay.
Steve Acroft, for the record, as I read it, that's correct.
Okay, so that's like the distinct difference between the old and new. And then, but new programs pop up all the time and financing pop up all the time. Is there any way to be able, I'd hate to have you guys not be getting these, property tax exemptions if you've got some new funding that would fall under some of these similar criteria. It just seems like it's very specific. And again, I don't know if there's a good way of wording it, but I would just hate to have you guys have your hands tied behind your back.
Steve Acroft, for the record, I will tell you probably 95% of the affordable housing that's built in the state through what I would call true affordable housing, not naturally occurring, but subsidized affordable housing is actually built through what is indicated there as Section 1A1, and that's the tax credit programs. So we don't see, unfortunately, we don't see a whole lot of new federal dollars coming through. And typically, if they are, they're probably going to come through the housing trust funds or the Section 42. So effectively, we're covering just about everything that can be developed through the division anyway with affordable housing with those two sources.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Nguyen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was looking at Section 3 in the back page, describing elderly person. And in terms of what the U.S. Code, in terms of elderly person, I think it's setting the age to be 62 and older. I think that's what the federal code is. And I remember my time as a planning commissioner back in Clark County, we were having projects coming up to us that were 55 plus. And that is actually a little bit more frequent. So does that mean that the 55 plus would not qualify because elderly person is described in the U.S. Code here that you're referring to is defining it as 62 plus?
Steve Acroft, for the record, that's a great question and one that I don't have an answer to. Because I did see that that's 62 plus, and I will tell you that the bulk of what we do as defined as senior housing is 55 plus.
Right.
So I don't know if that needs to be amended or if it works. It would be something we'd have to work with LCB to ensure that that's coming through correctly.
Yeah. Quick follow-up, Chair. And I would suggest that we do that because I think once it gets to the local level, then my successor would have some sort of clarity that needs to be explained. And these projects, as it come to our district, we want to make sure that they're not excluding because we're going with this definition versus of being very clear in our NRS.
Yeah.
So I would appreciate follow-up on that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chair.
Do any other members of the committee have any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, and we'll go on to take testimony in support of Assembly Bill 62. We'll go ahead, we'll start in Las Vegas. Sir, if you're there giving testimony in support of AB 62, go ahead and push the mic and state your name. If you can spell it, that'd be also very helpful. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair Baucus, members of the Assembly Revenue Committee. My name is Jess Molasky, M-O-L-A-S-K-Y. I'm a principal and project manager at Ovation Development, a company my dad, Alan, started back in 1984. By way of brief background, Ovation is one of Nevada's largest and leading developers of affordable housing for low-income seniors and working families. Our affordable housing communities total more than 1,900 units at 13 different communities, with more under development. It's a privilege to be testifying before you in support of Assembly Bill 62. AB 62 expands and modernizes existing tax exemption opportunities to encourage more low-income housing and affordable housing developments. These technical fixes to the property tax exemption will pave the way for more developers to join Ovation in affordable housing development. The finance structuring that makes affordable housing possible is complex, and in order to ensure rents remain affordable over decades to come, several federal and state programs must be layered into the financing structure. A key ingredient to this complicated formula is the property tax exemption. AB 62 creates more eligibility opportunities beyond the home funds that will increase efficiencies and speed up affordable housing projects, ensuring more Nevadans are housed quicker. Ovation believes all residents, regardless of socioeconomic status, deserve a quality home that helps to strengthen individual lives, families, and community. AB 62 furthers that goal, and we urge your support of AB 62. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if there's anyone else in Las Vegas that wishes to give testimony in support.
No one else.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go ahead and move to those here in Carson City. Feel free to start wherever you want to start.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Dylan Keith, Assistant Director of Government Affairs at the Vegas Chamber. We are in strong support of this bill. We believe it is a strong step forward. We appreciate the sponsors for bringing this good piece of legislation forward. It promotes, in a very common sense way, more affordable housing. It allows builders to do their jobs, and it's the right move forward. So we kindly ask your support. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Lazovich from Kemfer Kroll here on behalf of the City of Sparks. We are here in support of the bill, and on a personal note, in my capacity in the off session representing projects like this in Southern Nevada, I can tell you that this is a great step forward, and it will bring many more of these projects to the community. So thank you for your support of this bill today.
Nick Ciccone, City of Reno, Legislative Relations Program Manager. Thank you, Chair Backus, Vice Chair Considine, and members of the committee. I did just want to say and thank our partners at Washoe County and Sparks for being members of the Washoe County Home Consortium. They have been a vital part of this. But ultimately, this will remove that barrier that requires these folks to get home funds in order to get that property tax exemption, which is the most important part to make these projects pencil. So thank you very much, and I urge your support for Assembly Bill 62.
Good afternoon, Chair Backus and committee members. For the record, my name is Christine Hess, and I'm the Executive Director for the Nevada Housing Coalition. The Nevada Housing Coalition is a statewide nonprofit to promote and advance affordable housing solutions. Our organization includes 300 members across the state from the urban and rural communities, public and private sectors, developers, builders, finance, community service providers, and advocates. Thank you, Mr. Brewer and Administrator Acroft for the presentation, and of course, thank you to Assemblywoman Hodegui for her leadership in housing as Chair of the Advisory Committee on Housing. I'm here to express the Coalition's strong support for AB 62 that will bring more affordable housing and allow it to happen more timely and less costly, without a cost to our state and communities that isn't already there. The original intent of using home funds to trigger the property tax exemption was that the home program required a local financial match, and the exemption served as that match. Since the original law was enacted, our communities can meet the home match requirements in other ways. However, the property tax exemption is absolutely critical for the financial feasibility of developing and preserving affordable housing projects.
To our knowledge, there's no other state in the nation that utilizes the home program to trigger the property tax exemption. It's burdensome, and to grant token amounts of home funds to a project just for the exemption is incompatible with the program. The additional compliance components and the lack of coordinated timing of applications for home funds with our tax credit program, for example, cause significant project delays and add costs. More affordable homes, more quickly, no additional costs in today's reality. AB 62 is one of the Nevada Housing Coalition's top priorities this session, and we strongly support this bill. Thank you, Chair Backus and committee members, for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Ariel Edwards, A-R-I-E-L-L-E-E-D-W-A-R-D-S, Director of Government Relations for Nevada Hand. As the state's largest affordable housing developer and builder, we are in strong support of AB 62. This bill will remove barriers to develop affordable housing and streamline the financial process. And also, additionally, we have a letter of support from our President and CEO, Audra Hammernick, for your all's consideration. We urge the support of AB 62, and thank you so much for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. David Goldwater with Opinion Public Affairs, representing the Nevada Home Builders Association. At the urgency of some of the members, including Member Armstrong, last session we worked with the Housing Coalition over the interim on a number of legislative proposals, this being one of them. And I often pithily say that if it's cheap or politically easy, it's already been done around here. Well, I was wrong. This happens to be one of the instances where we can do something very good for a lot of people by expanding the eligibility for this tax exemption. I urge your support. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, honorable members of the committee. For the record, my name is John Sandy with Argentum Partners here today or this evening on behalf of the Nevada State Apartment Association. I believe we've officially hit the Me Too portion of support testimony, so I will go on and say Me Too. Our executive director has also submitted a letter in support, and we thank you for hearing this important legislation, and we urge your support. Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, Randy Robinson, on behalf of the City of Las Vegas, we support AB 62. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman, Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. We know that housing is the #1 issue facing our clients, from adult guardianship to our kids in foster care, that their kinship caregivers are struggling with housing. So we strongly support this bill, and we'll just have a ditto for everything else that was said here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. Nicole Rourke, representing the City of Henderson. We also support AB 62 for the aforementioned reasons. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to the phone lines. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line wishing to give testimony in support of Assembly Bill 62?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers to provide testimony.
Thank you so much. We'll go ahead and stay on BPS. I take it we also have no one on the line to give testimony in opposition?
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you so much. Then we'll move to Las Vegas. I don't believe anyone else is there, but if there's anyone there wishing to give testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 62, please come to the microphone. Okay, we will invite people here in Carson City. If there's anyone who wishes to give testimony in opposition of Assembly Bill 62, please come forward. Okay, we will circle back to the phone line. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line wishing to give testimony in neutral to Assembly Bill 62?
There are still no callers.
In Las Vegas, is there anyone in the room that wishes to give testimony in neutral to Assembly Bill 62? Okay, last but not least, Carson City. Do we have anyone here wishing to give testimony in neutral to Assembly Bill 62? Okay, would the presenters like to come back up and make any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair Backus and the committee. Bill Brewer for the record. We appreciate the time that's been given to consideration of this bill today and for the counsel that we've received. we'll be looking at that potential change for the bill and get that back to you as soon as we can. We look forward to working with the legislature on this great legislation. We appreciate all of the support it's received today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we will go ahead and close the hearing on Assembly Bill 62. That brings us to the end of today's agenda. Last but not least, we have public comment. BPS, do we have anyone on the phone line wishing to give public comment this evening?
Chair, there are still no callers to provide public comment.
Las Vegas, do we have anyone in the room that wishes to give public comment this evening? Okay, we'll move to Carson City. Is there anyone here this evening wishing to give public comment? Okay. Do we have any committee members that wish to make any remarks this evening? Great. With that, we actually have our next committee hearing next Tuesday, so we don't have a committee hearing this Thursday. So we will see everyone back Tuesday evening at 4 p.m. in room 4100. Look forward to seeing everyone. Thanks.